Alright people, JC here. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how you can set up a very simple game where the player has to tap some bubbles and try to score as many points as he or she can, alright? I'm going to show you my artwork. In this first frame I have my title, my start button, a text field for the user, the player to input his or her nick or name, right? Here's where the game itself is going to happen. I have this container here for the bubbles, right? And I have this bar to measure the time, right? Please notice here that this is a regular stroke, but I set it to vertical. So when I stretch this, okay, like this, I scale down, you want the form, right? Very simple. And the third frame is the rank, right? With some text fields on it. I want to show you my library, some folders and sounds and fonts, buttons, bitmaps. This bubble MC, okay, move clip. This will be the one we're going to grab at runtime. And here I have some sprites, right? If you go to the properties, you're going to see that I'm exporting for ActionScript, and the base class is sprite, not move clip. This is necessary for performance, alright? Every time you need a symbol, an object that you don't need a timeline, it's a good idea to set it as a sprite, okay? Alright, so let's start coding this. I'm going to bring my actions panel. I'm going to try to get some space here, right? And now I'm going to start typing our code. The first thing we need here is our function to start everything, okay? So I'm going to say function start, okay, returning nothing, void, alright? And start, right? Very simple, okay? I'll try to keep things simple, right? Sometimes things will be more dynamic, sometimes not, but it's all a matter of time, right? So here I'm going to stop the main timeline, okay? Very basic, very simple, and I need the first things I need to do is to get the value that it's in this text field, okay? Because later on I'm going to run a check to see if the user, if the player inputs a value name. For example, I don't want the player name to be your name, like it's in here, okay? And I don't want the player to leave this empty, alright? So I'm going to create a variable here above called initial text of type string, okay? And I'm going to initialize this here below, but you can initialize above if you want to, alright? I'm going to say initial text is equal to name text dot text, okay? I want the text property for the text field. And another thing I wanted to point out, if you never used ActionScript before, when you need to reference an object, an instance, you have to reference this name here, okay? This field here. This is the instance name, not this one here, because sometimes people think that the name in the library is the one we use to reference, but no. The correct name you have to use is this one here in the properties panel, right? So going back to the code, I'm going to say now that now I have this value stored, all right? Now another thing I want to do is to add an event listener to this text field, okay? So I'm going to say name text add event listener, right? The event will be of type focus event, right? Focus in. I'm going to use a anonymous function here to make things easier, right? Of type focus event. Void, right, like this. I'm going to break this so I can see everything. All right, here inside, one of the things I need to do is to clear that text field, right? So when the user presses that input input text, the text in there go away, okay? It's like that placeholder property of HTML text, all right? So I'm going to say current target because the name text is the object that actually received the listener. So the name text is the current target property, and dot text equals to an empty string, right? So I'm going to test this right now and see if this works, right? Wait for this export. When I click, the text goes away, right? Very simple. Now that we have done that, the next thing we need to do is to call a function here right in the beginning, because right now I'm going to show you how you can create the game mechanics, all right? But later on, we're going to check if there is a rank saved on the local file system, right? But right now, as we are not going to load anything, I'm going to just say ready. Okay, I'm just calling this function, right? I'm going to declare this down below. I'm going to say function ready void, right? Very simple. Here inside of this ready function, another thing I need is to add another event listener to this name text text field. Add event listener of type event.change, okay? Because this event will be called every time the user types something inside of this text field, right? Sorry, e.event void. I'm going to finish this, right? Maybe I could try to gain some more space down below. Okay, so when the user start typing, a thing I want to do is to make that start button to be visible or invisible depending upon if the string is valid or not, all right? So I'm going to create a function for this. So I'm going to say start button, it's called start button on the properties panel, dot visible is equal to validate, okay? Why am I doing this? Because the validate function will return a boolean value, okay? And the visible property is a boolean value. So if the validation is false, the button will be invisible. And if the validation is true, the button will be visible, right? So down below, I'm going to say function validate returning a boolean, right? And what I need to validate here, I want to validate if the name text.text is different from an empty string, all right? And if the name text.text is different from that initial value we stored in that variable, okay? Is different from the initial text, the initial string, okay? And we're going to return this, right? So it's going to return, okay, it's empty, no, it's different from that initial text, no, okay, so it's valid, we can go on, all right? So I'm going to test it again. Let's see what happens. So I click, as I start typing, you see this name is still valid, okay? But if it's empty, it goes away. Or if I try to say your name like it was before, start button goes away again, right? Very simple. And here, it's still inside of the ready function. Now I'm going to add an event listener to the start button itself, because now I think the play is ready to continue, all right? So I'm going to say start button dot add event listener mouse event of type click, okay? I'm going to pass another anonymous function, okay? Mouse event void, the same as before, right? And here I want another variable called current user, because I want to keep track of the name of the user that is playing this game, right? Because that text field where the user input his or her name won't be available all the time, okay? It won't exist in the frame 1. So here, when the user presses the start button, I'm going to say current user equals to name text dot text, right? And then I want to validate the user click, because even if we validate while the user is typing, we have to validate also when he clicks the button, right? So I'm going to say if validate only this, okay? Validate. What I'm saying is if validate is true, is returning true, okay, then we can move on to the next frame. So I'm going to say go to and stop game. I think this is the label I gave to my frames. Okay, let me check this out here. Okay, you can see here the first one is menu, the second one is game, and the third one is rank. Very simple, right? So this is it. Let's try again and see if we can go on, right? So for example, if I try to click now, it won't work because this URL name here is not valid, okay? But if I try to say something like I don't know, Sonic, I can go to the next frame, all right? So moving on to the next frame. Now this is the frame where the game actually happens, all right? So here I'm going to create another function to initialize everything. I'm going to call this function game setup, okay? Void, all right? And here I'm going to say game setup. I'm just going to call it inside of it. And here I'm going to create a grid of bubbles because I just don't want to spread bubbles randomly on the screen, because sometimes one bubble can overlap the other, and I don't want this. I want the bubbles to be positioned first in the grid, and then I offset the position bit to the left, to the right, to the top, to the bottom. I rotate to the bit scale, and things will look like they are randomized, but not totally randomized, okay? So here what I need to do first is to go back to the frame 1 and create a constant for the total bubbles I want for this game, right? I'm doing this in the frame 1 because I want the developer to have a config page or area region, right? So I'm going to say total bubbles. I'm going to use that how can I say uppercase notation, all right, for the constants. All right, so total bubbles. So returning to the frame 2, okay, I can create a for loop. I'm going to say for, okay, I'm going to create to declare the I variable outside of the loop because I'm going to need this again. So I'm going to say var I of type uint because I want integer positive numbers, all right? So I'm going to initialize 0. Its I is smaller than the total bubbles, I plus plus, okay? Very basic and common for loop, right? And now that I have this, I want also to a variable to store the actual bubble, okay? We're going to bring from the library, all right? I'm going to say bubble of type bubble, all right? So here I can say bubble is equal to a new bubble. And then inside of that bubble, I have a text field called txt. So I'm going to say bubble.txt.text is equal to I plus 1, all right? So I'm wrapping this inside of a string because the text property is a string, because I want bubbles to start from 1. So it's going to be number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. And now I have to handle the positioning, right? So to handle the positioning, I'm going to use that, how can I say, technique or calculation where you set the, how can I say, the number of rows based on the number of columns, okay? So for example, I have 24 bubbles. If my grid has 4 columns, it means I'm going to have 6 rows, okay? Something like this. So to do this, I have to get the I value, use the modulus operator, and divide by the number of columns. I didn't set the number of columns, but I'm going to go back to the first frame. I'm going to set here, here after the total bubbles, okay? I'm going to say const columns of type uint is equal to 6, right? So going back to our code for the full loop, with this value set, I can say now modulus of columns, okay? And I can multiply this by the width of the bubble, right? And for the y value, it will be similar, but instead of passing the modulus operator, I'm going to pass the division operator, right? And instead of width is height. I'm going to export now, but first I have to add this bubble to that container I showed you in the beginning, because I'm not going to add directly to the stage, okay, to the main timeline. I mean, I'm going to add to the container because it's easier to control, all right? Bubble, add child bubble, all right? So let's see if everything is correct. Let's test this and see if it works, right? I'm going to just type anything here, doesn't matter. Okay, you see the bubbles are added, but not quite the way we expect, right? I'm going to fix this right now. The first thing, I need to wrap this in a uint, because when the division of I by columns, when I divide I by columns, the result is not an integer number, but we need integer numbers, okay? And we need a positive integer number. So I'm going to wrap in a uint data type, all right? And another thing I want is to offset the bubbles to the left and to the bottom. So I'm going to say bubble.width times 0.5 because my bubbles are aligned in the middle, okay? So I have to use the half of the width and the half of the height, right? Another thing I need is a gap here, because the way things are now, the bubbles will be right, there won't be space between them, okay? Let me show you this. Let me show you this so you can see better, right? Take a look. Anything, start, okay? I need some space, and later on I need to center these bubbles in the middle of the screen, right? I'm going to create a variable here called gap. I'm going to say for gap of type uint. Maybe I can give this 20, right? And here, to offset them, I have to rise the value I'm using for this space, for the current space. So it's only a matter of wrapping the width and the height plus the gap value, right? So you can do this, okay? And I'm going to take the time to center those bubbles here, okay? So I'm going to say container.x is equal to stage width minus container.width multiplied by a half. Okay, you can divide by 2. I always prefer to multiply by a half because it's said to be faster, and I think it's more readable. Okay, but you can divide by 2. Don't worry about this. Height, and here I have height, right? So let's see the result. Okay, anything, start. Okay, everything centered, nicely positioned, right? Very good. So let's continue. Another thing I need here is a array to store the bubbles I'm adding, and a vector to store I'm sorry, I need an array to store the bubbles positions, and I need a vector to store the bubbles, because I'm going to need to reference them later on, right? So I'm going to say var positions of type array is equal to an empty array, right? I need another one called var dot bubbles of type vector storing bubble is equal to a new vector storing bubble, right? So I can finish like this. And here down below, maybe if I can get more space here. Let me see. Yeah, I think it's better now. What I need to do now with these two variables, I can get the positions array, and after adding this to the display list using add child, I can say positions I. Okay, I could use push, but if you use the bracket notation, it's set to be faster, right? So I'm going to say new point. Okay, I use the point data type to store the position of each bubble right now, bubble.x, bubble.I, right? Let me gain some space here, and now I need the bubbles to just store the bubble, right? So like this. But as you could see before, the bubbles are a number in order, okay? But that's too easy, because if we use the reading order, it's very predictable. So we have to sort that those numbers. So every time the number 1, number 2, number 3, and so on will be in different places, okay? To do this, I'm going to use a very simple sorting method that some people say that this is not the best one, okay? But for our case, it's a very simple situation, so I really don't care, okay? If it's not that efficient, okay? So I'm going to say the array positions is equal to positions dot sort, right? The sort gets a function, okay? Returning a number, I guess. Sorry, a number, right? Like this. Let me break here from format, and here I have to pass two values. I'm going to call A and B, right? The type is variable, so I'm going to use the asterisk, right? And here inside, all I have to do is to say return 0.5 minus math.render. What this means is that every time one of the items of the array is accessed, it's going to compare. It's going to say, oh, if the math.render, if the value is smaller than 0.5, so you will be in the front. If it's not, you'll be in the back, okay? It's like this. In this way, you get a completely random ordered array, all right? Right. So now, moving on, what we can do is to create another for loop, as I told you before, because I want now. I created the grid, okay, but I want now to get every single bubble and change the positions a bit, the scale a bit, the rotation a bit, right? So this is what I'm going to do now. So I'm going to say for. I think I need more space. I'm trying to use a very big font, so you'll have a very good time watching these on mobile devices, right? I'm going to say I is equal to 0 because we have already declared the I variable. I is smaller than the length of that bubbles array, okay? I++, all right. Oh, sorry, too many curly braces. So here I can say bubble is equal to the current bubble of that array, right? And I can say bubble dot scale x is equal to bubble dot scale I, sorry, that is equal to 0.75 plus math.random times 0.25. The reason I'm doing this is because I want a random number from 0.75, okay, to 1. Right? I don't want the bubbles to be very small. Okay, I could only say math.random because math.random returns a number from 0 to 1. Okay, and the scale is a value from 0 to 1. But I want to limit this, right? Another thing is the rotation. Rotation is equal to math.random times 360. Oh, I mean 90, because I don't want a full rotation, because sometimes the numbers are upside down, it can be confusing. For example, the numbers 6 and 9. Okay, so just a bit rotated. And now for the x and y position, it's where the positions array takes place, because I'm going to say positions I dot x. Remember, the positions array stores points, and points have x and y properties, plus a offset. I'm going to declare this right now, plus math.random times offset x times 2. Okay, I'm going to write this, but don't worry, because I'm going to explain to you what's going on. Y here, here's y again, y in here, right? So here on the top, I'm going to say var offset x of type uint is equal to 6, and offset y is equal to 6 as well. All right, going back here, what I'm doing is to get the position of the grid, right? And I'm adding to this an offset, okay? But I want this offset to be to the left or to the right, to the top or to the bottom. That's why I need to get the return value from the math.random, and I multiply by the double of the offset. What this will effectively do in the end is, for example, I'm passing 6 as the offset. So if the position of the bubble is 100, so the final position can be 106 or 94, okay? Because it can add 6 or subtract 6, okay? The same for the y-axis, right? And okay, I think now with this we can test this again. Let's see if this works, right? Hopefully, okay. Anything. And start. All right, now you can see the positions are not that predictable anymore, because I sorted the positions array, okay, and I get the position of it stored in it. For example, if I go back to the code here, I had, for example, each bubble stored from the 1, 2, 3, 4 in a grid fashion, okay, from left to right, top to bottom. But here, when I access that positions again, for example, the first item in that array is not the first position anymore. It can be the last one, it can be the middle one, right? So that's why you get the effect. And the other things you could notice, I'm going to show you again, is the scaling, okay? Some are bigger or smaller than the others, and the rotation, okay? You see the numbers are rotated, but not too much. You can still tell which one is 6 and which one is 9, right? Very simple. And now that we have this, now that we have set the grid, okay, now everything is in the correct place. I think right now we can already add some animation for this bubble to not just show up the way they are now, right? And to do this, I'm going to use a twin, okay, the default twin class from ActionScript. And for this, I'm going to first create I'm going to need a timeout, okay. I'm going to say var timeout of type uint is equal to 0. You could just call set timeout, but I always like to import my classes even if I'm using the Animate IDE. Okay, so I'm going to say flash.utils.set timeout. All right. I think it's a very good practice. All right. Timeout, I need to create this inside of the for loop because I'm going to need a timeout for each bubble, okay? Because the twin function in ActionScript doesn't have a delay like those from GreenSock, okay? Like TwinMax, GSAP, right? So with this in mind, I can say timeout is equal to set timeout, okay? It needs a function and need a delay, right? The delay, I want this to be random, so each bubble will appear at a different time, right? So I can say here math.random. Right now I'm just going to hard code this by 300. Oh, I don't know. Maybe we can create a variable here on the top. And here I'm using 300 because the timeout function needs the time in milliseconds, okay? So this is the same as 0.3 seconds, okay? So I can say, I don't know, var bubble delay type uint is 300, right? So I could say something like this. I'm going to format this, and for the timeout, I need another values, okay? I'm going to need the bubble, the current bubble, because this is going to be something asynchronous, okay? So I have to store the current bubble to access it later, and the current index, okay? And I'm going to pass this here after the delay, because after the delay you can pass as many arguments as you wish, right? And inside of this timeout, I can first set the bubble to be invisible. All right. And I'm going to need here 4 twin variables. Okay. So I'm going to the top. I'm going to say var enter twin x of type twin, because if you have already used the twin class from ActionScript, you know you can only animate one property at a time, okay? That's why I'm going to need 4 variables to animate 4 properties, okay? So enter twin x, enter twin y, enter twin scale x. So I can just add the word scale here, something like this, okay? Going back to the timeout, now I can say enter twin x is equal to a new twin. Oh, another thing I need is the easing package, okay? So I'm going to say import fl dot I don't know if it's not the motion dot easing dot asterisk, okay? That is a easing package in the transitions package, I guess, but I prefer to use the easing classes from the motion package, okay? So going back here, you can say it's equal to a new twin, okay? So the first thing I need is to pass the actual object that's going to be animated, the property, the easing type. I'm going to use back is out. That's why I imported that package. I need this to go from the d.x plus math dot random times 50 times signs. I'm going to create a vector called signs, don't worry, I'm going to show you. Index modulus 2, okay. The final value is the current x value. It will happen with a 0.35 seconds true, right? So let me create the signs here, because the signs vector is a vector that will start from only two values, 1 and -1 and 1, okay? Because I want in one iteration to be the bubble to come from the left, and another iteration to come from the right. All right, so I'm going to say var signs type vector holding int, an integer value, because -1 is negative, so no, I can use uint. Okay, is equal to new int -1 and 1. Right? So what I'm doing here, okay, I'm getting the current position of the bubble, and I'm adding a random value from 0 to 50, and I'm multiplying this by the value, one of the values in the signs vector, okay? Because I'm using the modulus operated by 2, sometimes this result will be 0, sometimes it will be 1, okay? Something similar to the y-axis, okay? It's just a matter of inverting. I think the rest is okay. Okay, let me be sure here, right? So now I can use the enter twin scale x. Okay, I think the calculation for this one is more simple. I can just say scale x. Okay, the is the same, and I can, for the initial value, I want this to go from 0, okay, to the current scale. Right, so it's going to be this b scale x, right? So here's the same, here's the same, okay, here's the same, all right? Okay, I think for now this is all we need to make the bubbles appear, okay? To be more interesting, right? Let's see what happens. Okay, okay, so I have a problem. It seems I inverted the logic, okay? So to fix this, okay, actually, when the timeout is called, I want to make the bubbles visible, okay? And here, I need to make them invisible, okay? It's the exact opposite of what I've just done, okay? Let's try again. So let's type and think, start. Okay, now it comes in animated, okay? Very cool. Now that we have the grid, the bubble set, and they are animated, the next step is to add interactivity, okay? Now we have to add a click event to the bubbles, right? But first, before doing that, I think I'm going to set the time for this bar, okay? Because I want the player to have a fixed amount of time to click the bubbles, because I don't want the player to have the whole life to find the bubbles, okay? So for this, I'm going to need another twin variable. I'm going to call this time twin, type twin, okay? Here below, outside of the for loop, I can say time twin is equal to a new twin, okay? I'm going to say bar dynamic bar, okay? I'm going to show you what I'm doing. in this move clip, in this sprite, actually, I have another three objects. The one on the top is the dynamic bar. It's called dynamic bar because this is the one we're going to actually change the scale over time. So this is what we're going to target, right? So bar, dynamic bar, the property is scale x, linear dot is none, 1 for the initial value and 0 for the final value, okay? And here I'm using linear dot is none because the scaling has to follow the time, okay? So the time is going to change from the max value to the minimum value, okay, in a constant change of time, okay? And for the total value, I'm going to create another constant here. I'm going to call game time, okay? Here in the first frame, like we're doing for the other constants, I'm going to say game time of type uint is equal to 10 seconds. I only want to give the player 10 seconds to find as many bubbles as he or she can, right? So here I can pass the duration for as game time and true because I want to use seconds, right? And when this motion finishes, I want to add an event listener to detect it, right? So I'm going to say trim motion finish, and this time I'm going to pass a reference to a function, okay? It's going to be a function outside of this current function, okay? So I'm going to create this here. I'm going to say function timeout of type twin event returning nothing. Alright, so what we need to do here, first thing we need to do is to create another vector that I'm going to call exit twins, okay? I'm going to say var exit twins of type vector storing twins, okay, is equal to a new vector storing twins, right? So because later on you're going to see that every time I click or press a bubble, I'm going to make it disappear after a certain amount of time, okay? So, but it can happen sometimes when the time is up, one of these twins cannot be finished. And if they finish before the time is up, while the time is finishing, okay, while it's changing frame, it can put an arrow, it can throw an arrow, right? That's why we need to make sure that every time the time is up and the current frame changes, we need to clean all twins that are going on, right? So I'm going to say for var of type uint is equal to 0, okay? I need another variable here to store the total. Let's say total of type uint is equal to exit twins dot length I smaller than total I plus plus, right? The only thing we need to do here is to access every single twin stored on that variable and say stop, okay, and stop the twin. And after this, you won't have to change the frame, right? We're going to go to the rank and see the result. Very simple, right? And as we have done this, now all we have left here is to add an event listener to the container, okay? Because we need to be able to click on the actual bubbles. But for this, we don't need to add an event listener for each bubble. It's just a matter of adding an event listener to the container itself, okay, and then later on we can use the e.target, the event.target property, and get each and every bubble on that container. Okay, I'm going to say click, and I'm going to pass another function called count, right? So I'm going to say function count mouse event, like this, right? So what we need to do inside of this count function, we have to get the current clicked bubble, right? For this first, before I forget, I have to come here in this first for loop we created and set the bubble mouse children property to false, because the bubble object is a sprite, and by default sprite doesn't have this set to false. Okay, obviously because you need to interact with children inside of it normally, but in our case I don't want, when I use the when I'm trying to detect in mouse event, I don't want any of the children of the bubble, the shape inside of it, the text inside of it, the text field, to be the actual target. Okay, so when I click on that container, I want to make sure that I'm getting the bubble itself, not its children, right? So bubble is equal to e.target as bubble, because the e.target it's an object, okay, it's a generic object, but we need to tell the compiler, the runtime, that we are making sure that we are working with a bubble. Okay, so to check what's going on when we click, I think I didn't mention in the beginning, the game, the idea of this game is that you have to click the numbers in order. Okay, so the first one you have to click is the number 1, then number 2, then number 3, and so on. So you can start clicking on the number 3. Okay, so if you click on the number 1, the next one has to be the number 2. Okay, so you have to check this to make sure the player will click the bubbles in order, right? So I'm going to say uint dot bubble dot txt dot text, right, is equal to counter plus 1. I'm going to create this variable counter here, and I'm going to explain to you. Bar counter uint is equal to 0, right? So what's going on? Inside of that text field, I have bubbles. Inside of those bubbles, I have text with string values from 1 to, I don't know, 23, I guess, to 24, right? So we have to get that value, okay? But the value is a string, so we have to cast this value as a number, a positive integer, and we have to see if the current count, the value inside of that is equal to the current count plus 1, okay? Because right now it's 0. So when I click the number 1, it's going to just say, okay, you have clicked 1, and 1 is equal to counter plus 1. 1 is equal to 0 plus 1. Yeah, it is. Okay, if it is, what we can say is what we can do is to add 1 to the current count. Okay, so the next time I click, the count is 1. I'm going to click on number 2. So 2 is equal to 1 plus 1, and so on. Okay, I hope you get the idea. And I need another variable called score, because this is the one I'm going to use to keep track of the user score. All right, I'm going to say score plus plus because the user is correct, and I'm going to say bubble.goTo and stop to. Right, I'm doing this. I didn't show you because here I have this inside of this bubble move clip. I have another frame with a graphic for the pop animation. Okay, that's why this bubble is not a sprite, because I need more than one frame, right? So going back here, I'm going to send the bubble to the frame 2, and I'm going to set the bubble.mouse enabled property to false, because I don't want the user to click this bubble again, right? So let's test this. Let's see what happens. Okay, I have 2 errors. Exit twins. You don't know what exit twins are. Probably it's a typo. Okay, exit twin. Okay, I declared this inside of this function, but it has to be global. Okay, so it has to be outside. Let's try again. Try anything, start, and you see the time is running. I can, if I try to click on other bubbles I can, but if I click the first one, it goes away. Okay, second one, it goes away, and when the time is up, it goes to the third frame. All right. Another issue we have here is that when we click the bubbles, they change the second frame, but they stay there. Okay, now we have to add a how can I say, a twin to make the bubble actually go away, and that's why we need the exit twins vector, right? So for this, when I click it on the bubble, I'm going to get that vector, okay, and I'm going to add a new bubble to the first position of that vector, because it's easier then later on to reference this by exit twins 0. Okay, so I'm going to say no twin. Inside of this constructor, I'm going to say, I'm going to pass the bubble. I'm going to animate the alpha. I'm going to use a sign for the easing, okay, because it's going away. It makes more sense to use easing. Okay, I want this to go from 1 to 0 during 0.2 seconds and true, right? And I want to add an event listener to this bubble, okay, to this twin. I'm going to say add event listener dot twin event motion finish again. I'm going to pass a anonymous function here, because it's something very simple and I don't need to make this an external function. Okay, and inside of this, all I need to do is to check if I actually have a object being twinned, because sometimes it can be it can come as null or undefined, I don't know. So I can say container.remove child.e.target.object. This object property is a property you can get from twins when you want to access the actual object being twinned, right? So let's try this out. Let's type in thing, start. Let's try clicking. Okay, now you see it goes away, right? I have to try to click in order. It's very hard. It's harder than it seems. Okay, so I clicked the bubbles and they went away, right? All right. Now I think we are ready to move on to the next frame. Okay, now we're going to set up the rank, right? For this, this is the max I can get. Maybe I can make this library go away, right? In this third frame, I'm going to start the function called finish. Okay, here I have an object called highlight, because this object is going to show which position is the user, right? So I'm going to say highlight.visible is equal to false, because depending upon the number of entries we have on this rank, the user may or may not appear. Okay, No, I'm sorry, the user will appear, right? But it can happen sometimes that this highlight won't be needed. We're going to see later how this is going to happen, right? One thing I can do here is to add an event listener to the back button. It's a mouse event of type click. Okay, the back button is this arrow right here. Okay. I can pass in an anonymous function because it's a very simple functionality, right? And what I can say is go to and stop menu, okay? Because if the user wants to go back to the menu, he can do it. He or she can do it. Another thing I have here, let me get some space, right? Are these text fields for the user position, for the username, and the score. I need to set these text fields so they depend upon the length of the string. It can resize automatically, right? To do this, we can use the auto size property of a text field. The first one is called position text dot auto size is equal to, I'm going to import a text class here called text fields auto size. Okay, I can say text field auto size dot left because my text fields are aligned to the left. All right, I'm going to duplicate. I'm going to say user text, and this one is going to be points text. With they all set up, I'm going to create another function here to actually set up the rank. Okay, I'm going to say function rank returning nothing. I'm sorry, not rank, not just rank setup. And they can call it here. Let me get some space, right? Okay, now for the rank to work, we're going to need an external class to handle the saving loading, okay? To handle how we can access the local file system and save the rank and all the fetch the data inside of the save file. I can now press Ctrl or Command N to create a new file. I'm going to create a new ActionScript file called storage. Alright, I need some room now. I think I can get rid of that timeline. Okay, I'm going to save this, try to save this. Not in here, but in here, storage.as. Right? Let me format this. Oh, sorry. Alright. Now, this storage class, it has some static functions, okay? Static methods we can use to handle the saving and loading of files. And these functions are static because we don't need to instantiate this class, okay? If you need to use the storage class, you can say, we can for example just write storage dot something, right? Like we do with the math class. So we need a function public static function save returning nothing, right? Public static function load, and we need a few parameters. The first one is a file path type string. The next one is the actual value we're going to store in the file, called, it's a string as well, right? I think we can break these lines because it's going to be too long. So I'm going to say now I need a complete callback. I'm going to go to call complete function. It's going to be function equals to null because I don't want this to be mandatory. I need a arrow function. Then I'm going to set it to null as well, and I need a directory. Okay, we're going to see why. This one is going to be documents directory, right? For the load function, we don't need a save string. The other ones are needed, right? So what I need to do here is to create 3 variables, okay? Because in this approach I'm taking, I'm not going to use shared object because I think shared objects are more suited to the Flash player, to the browser, okay? But here I want to actually handle saving, loading, and modifying files in the local file system. So the first one is a variable of type file string, right? Is equal to a null file string. But okay, you can import the file already. I need a file. Now it's a file, and this file, the file class is a reference to a file in the local system. Okay, the file string is to handle saving, loading, modifying, okay, files. I'm going to pass file dot directory dot resolve path, and here we can actually pass the file path variable, right? And finally, the third variable is a byte array, is of type byte array. Okay, the byte array class is to handle binary data. We need to add 2 event listeners to that file variable. Add event listener, event of type complete. I'm going to use a anonymous function, right? Type event. Like this. And I need another event listener for arrow events. So I'm going to say IO arrow event of type IO arrow, okay? IO arrow event, like this. Here inside of the complete event, what we need to do is to check if the user passed a complete callback, okay? Because the sole purpose of this is to return is to do something when we save or when we load the file. It's different from null. We call the complete function passing the argument, the event argument. Instead of the arrow function, what we can do is something similar. But instead of checking for the complete function, we're going to check for the arrow function. And you can also trace what's in the arrow text, so it's more clear to us if something goes wrong, right? In the load function, here still inside of the save function, there are a few things we need to do. We need to open the file string. Okay, we're going to pass the file, and we need to set the file mode for this. I'm going to import here file mode, and the file mode we want is the append, because every time we save a user entry, we want to add to the current ones, okay? Because I don't know, I had the Sonic user, it's called, I don't know, 10 points. Then Mario is called 8. So I don't want to erase the previous records. Using the byte array variable, the bytes variable, I'm going to use a method called write utf bytes, passing that save string. This is the method we use, okay, as we're getting a extra string, and we can finally write those bytes, okay, using the bytes variable. And finally we can close this the file string, right? Inside of the load function, I'm going to need these listeners again with some changes, of course. I'm going to first declare a variable here on the top called file, because I need again a reference to that file location, passing the directory and calling resolve path, okay, passing file path. The arrow function will remain the same, we don't need to change it. And inside of the complete function, we only need to add 2 lines. Another file reference, I'm going to redeclare here, but maybe we could make use of the other file variable. I'm going to create another byte array variable. It's going to be file.data as byte array, because we need the value of the file we're loading. And here on the complete function, we're going to pass not only the event, but the bytes data. And here in the end, all we have left to do is to actually load the file. Okay, I hope everything is correct. We can save this, close. I can call the actions panel again. I'm already on the first frame. We need to go to the first frame again, because I need to set up some things here for the loading, of data to work. All right. So the first thing is to go inside of the start function and call that storage class and call the load method. You can see I can call directly without instantiating the storage class. Okay. I'm going to pass the path of my save file. I'm going to create here on the top, called save path equals to string is equal to, I'm going to call this file.save, okay? In my case, the extension doesn't matter. You can call txt, JSON, it's up to you. I'm going to copy and paste. The complete function I'm going to call load complete, and the other one load arrow. I'm going to declare them here below. Function load complete. Remember, I need an event of a parameter of type event and another one of type byte array. Okay, so I'm going to say bytes of type bytes byte array, returning nothing. And ahead of time, I'm going to create the arrow function. The arrow function is important in this case, especially because when the game runs for the first time, we're not going to have anything saved. So it's going to fire arrow. Okay, it will be necessary for this case. Okay, load arrow. Here I need only one parameter called IO of type arrow, IO arrow event. And inside of this load arrow, now we can call that ready function after we have tried or have loaded our file. We're not going to call this directly in here. We're going to call this in here. Because with or without data, we need to check first if we have data or not. Instead of the load complete, we need to set up some things. Okay. The first thing is to call a variable called response array of type array is equal to this byte I just get. I need to convert this to a string, and I need to convert this to an array. I'm going to show you why we need to do this. And the character for this splitting is the pipe character. I need another local variable called pair of type array. I need to set up a for loop. In this for loop I can say var I of type uint is equal to 0, and the length and the total will be total dot uint is equal to this response array dot length. Okay, I is smaller than total, I plus plus. And what we have to do here, first we need to get that pair array, and we need to say response array I dot split. Because my idea here is to save my rank like this. For example, my user is called Sonic and it's called the 10 points. Okay, so I'm going to say 10, and let me wrap this 10 Sonic. Okay, and the other user is Mario, so Mario is called 8, so it's going to be 8 dot Mario. The other one is Link, so Link is called I don't know 6. So okay, this is the way my save file will be. This is the data I'm going to save in my save file. Okay, this is my formatting. Okay, this is just my personal preference. You can format the way you want. Maybe you can use a JSON. In this case, I'm not going to use JSON formatting, but you can use. I need an array here to actually store the values I'm getting from this file. Okay, it has to be global. So I'm going to declare this on the top. Array equals to an empty array. And here inside of this for loop, I need to get the current position of the array using the I variable and storing an object with two values, a score and the user. The score will be the pair array we just set here. Okay. And the value is going to be pair 0, because the first result is the score, and the second one is the user. And here it's not dot, it's a column, like I showed you. And the user is just the second value of that array. Okay, I hope it makes sense for you. Because look, let's suppose the current one is Sonic. Okay, so 10 Sonic. We get this value and we split in the column. Okay, so the first item of this pair array is 10. So I'm passing here as the score, but this is a string. I need to cast as a number, as an integer, positive integer number. And the second value is the user. The user will be Sonic. So I store here as 1 because this is the second item of this array. Alright, so this function is ready. Okay, I've just loaded my file or not. If I loaded, I get the data there, and they store all I have in this array. Okay. There are some things we can do here for the validation, because in the beginning, if you remember, we were just validating if the text field, the input text field, was empty or is equal to the initial text. But now we have to make sure that the user, the name or the nick that will be used, it's not in that rank file, because I don't want duplicates. If I play the Sonic, I don't want my friend to play as Sonic as well. Okay? So what I need to do first is to change our validation with using another function I'm going to create. I'm going to create a function called user already exists. It returns a boolean as well. I need here a for loop. I'm going to say var of type uint is equal to 0, total of type uint is equal to rank dot length, I smaller than total, I plus plus. And here, to check if the user exists or not, all you have to do is to get the current rank item, check for the user property. If the user property is equal to the current user variable we set here when the user clicks the start button. If it is, return true. Alright? And if none of the items will match, we have in the end, after the loop, to return false, because the user wasn't found. Okay, so you can use that name actually, right? So going back to the start button, add event listener to the handler function, let's change this a bit. Okay, I'm going to remove this line for now, and I want to extend this validation, this if statement. Inside of this, I'm going to check again for the length of the rank, because first I want to make sure that we actually have data, because in the first time we're not going to have of the player deletes our file. Okay, so if we actually have data, we can do something. If not, we're going to just send the user to the game frame, because we don't have a save file. And here inside, we can finally use that user already exists function. And if the user already exists, we're going to get that warning text I showed you in the beginning and warn and tell the player the user already exists. If not, we can send it to the game frame, because if it exists, you cannot continue, but if it doesn't exist, then you can continue. And just things to look nice for the user. For example, when I'm typing my name in that change event I have here, I can say warning text is empty, because if the user finds out that the name already exists, when he tries to type again, I want the message to go away. We can do this here, I think. Okay, and I think it's a good idea to maybe do this here when I click on that text field, right? So okay, by now the first frame is complete. I think we can move on to the next frame. One thing I want to do ahead of time is to create another constant called max rows of type uint that is equal to 7. You're going to see why later, because I want to limit the number of rows, because I don't want the rank to be infinite. If you have already played some Super Famicom games or Genesis Mega Drive games, you may remember that usually the rank has 10 positions, okay? The first 9 are for the players, for the best players, okay? And the last one, even if your score doesn't deserve to be in the top 10, the game still shows you where you are. But for example, your position is your position number is 100. But even though I want to show you in that rank, okay? But I think this is going to be more clear later. So let's go back to the third frame, and let's set up the actual rank setup, okay? Okay, so here we start setting up our text. We have our listener for the back button, and we have started creating our rank setup function. Okay, so now we have to write this function body. For this, I have to set the string in there to be empty, because I'm going to append text to it, so it has to start empty. Okay, so I have to do this to the user text, to the points text. Inside of it, I need to do two things first with that rank variable, with that rank array. We have to push the current user data the same way we did when we load. So score. Remember, we create a score variable when we tap the bubbles, and the current user that we set when we click the start button. Okay. Another thing is to sort this array so we can show from the maximum value to the minimum value. To do this, we're going to use the score variable, score property as the parameter for the sorting, and we're going to make sure this is going to be numeric sorting. We need here to create a for loop. You can see we use a lot of for loops. Var I of type uint is equal to 0, total of type uint is equal to the rank dot length I is smaller than total, and I plus plus. I already have these curly braces. Let me bring this back and get room here. Alright, here inside of this for loop, the first thing is to check if the current value is smaller than the max row constant we create in the first frame that I set to 7, if I remember correctly. Okay, if it's smaller, we're going to do some things. If it's not, we're going to do another things. We're going to need a function to set our text. This function only needs the index. I'm going to declare this down below. Function set text, use an index of type uint, returning nothing. What we have to do in this set text function, we're going to say position text dot append text, and the text we're going to append for the position text is that I don't know, sharp or hash character. passing the current index plus 1 because I want the positions to start from 1. Okay, and I want to add a no line character. The user text, I'm going to append text as well, append, and if I can spell it correct, I can say rank index dot user because I want the username plus the no line character. For the points text field, I want to say string. I'm going to wrap inside of a string my rank dot index dot score plus pts space no line character. Very simple. Going back to the for loop, now we have to run another check. I'm going to say if the rank dot length is bigger than 1 and rank dot I dot user is equal to the current user. And if this is true, I'm going to call a function called set highlight, passing the index again. What I'm doing here is I have to check if I have more than one items in the rank, okay, for the highlight work, and that the current user is equal to the user we're accessing at the moment is equal to the current user, because then we can set the highlight. Okay, we're going to see how this works in a few moments. If the value of I is bigger than the maximum number of rows I assigned, I can say highlight.visible. I check if the highlight.visible. If it's not, I can break, okay? Because the code, the things I want to do here only make sense if a highlight is being used. So I'm going to say rank I dot user is equal to current user. If it is, I can say set texts I. Remember, we need the index for the set text function to work, and I need to call the set highlight function again. But this time I want to pass the max rows, right? And if I find this, I can break, because I only want to set the text and highlight when I find the current user, because I want to always make sure that the player shows up in the rank. Okay, so when I find it, I get the current value for the score, the name, and so on, but the position has to be the last row in my rank. Okay, and we have to define the set highlight function. Okay, I just forgot about this. So I'm going to say function set highlight receiving in an index of type uint and void. And to do this, the first thing we need to do is to make sure it's visible, because if not, it doesn't make sense. And I want to set the Y position of this position text dot Y plus position text dot get line matrix 0 dot height times index plus 5. What's going on here? The positioning of the highlight, it's going to be the position of the Y position of the position text plus the height of the first line of the position text. We can use this get line matrix for the text field class, and then you can access the height. We're going to multiply by the index, and I'm going to give a offset of 5. Okay, And all right. So if we go back to the finish function, there are important things we still need to do here for this to work. Because we never saved our rank, okay? We tried to load, okay, but when we save this, okay, we save this when when the game is sent to the rank, okay? And as we are in the rank, all we have left to do now is to get the current data and send to the file, okay, we're using. So I'm going to say storage.save. Okay, remember it needs a save path. We started on that constant, and here I need to do something. We're going to understand why. I need to say if rank.length is bigger than 1, then the value, then I'm going to need a pipe character. If not, I'm going to need an empty string. I'm going to concatenate the score wrapped in a string value. I'm going to add the column character plus the current user. What am I effectively doing here? Remember that the formatting of our text is like this. I think 6 for I'm using this score, but of course they can be different, right? So what we're doing here is to check if the length of the rank is bigger than 1, then we don't need to add the pipe character, okay? We only need to add the pipe character in the beginning. I'm sorry, we only need to add the pipe character when the length of the array of this rank array of this data is bigger than 1, because in the first time we don't want to put the pipe character here, right? We just need the pipe character starting from the second position and so on. So now all I have left is to try our game. Okay, you can see here I have an IO error because, as I told you before, I don't have a save file. If I go to my documents here, you can see I don't have a save file. So let's start playing. Let's try playing with Sonic. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's pretty hard. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay. So Sonic scored 10 points, and if I go to my file, if I come back here, you're going to see, let's call Sublime. Let me drag it over, okay? You can see here, I have the data of Sonic saved. So let's play this again. Let's see, I'll try to be Sonic again. You see, it won't allow me, because Sonic name is already on that rank. So I'm going to try Mario, okay? Mario is possible. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Where is the 8? I'm not seeing the 8. Okay. So you can see now that we have more than one entry. It makes sense to highlight who we are, okay? Because if we only have only one entry, it doesn't make sense to highlight it, because it's of course it's you. You are, in the beginning you were Sonic, okay, but now you are Mario. So this is the logic of all that setup we did here, okay? Let me show you again. That's why we have to make sure the highlight is visible. That's why we make sure here. Okay. Alright. So now all we have left is to add some sounds. And to do this, I'm going to create a class to handle only this. Okay. For our code to be more organized. Let me get some space. This class is more simple than the storage class, so don't worry. Okay. Let me format this a bit. Alright. So to create an audio class, we need a static function to actually play our sounds. So I'm going to say public static function play. Okay, void. The parameters we need here is a sound. I don't have a fixed type, so I'm going to write asterisk, and I need a volume of type number. I'm going to say var sound transform of type sound transform is equal to a null sound transform. I need another one for the channel, for the sound channel. I'm just going to call this sound channel is equal to a null sound channel. Another thing I forgot here is that this function shouldn't be inside of the constructor, okay? We don't actually need a constructor. This is a static method, so it doesn't make sense to use it inside of a constructor. So the channel, we're going to pass the sound and play it. The sound transform, we need to change the volume using our passed volume as an argument, and we need to actually apply the sound transform to the channel using the sound transform variable. Okay, so it's pretty much it. Okay, I'm not going to make it more complex. Okay, it's very simple for this example. So going back to our code, now I have to just call this the sounds in the moments we need. Okay, I'm going to bring my library again so you can see what sounds we have. You can see here I set some linkage names. To do this, you go to the properties, action script, check export for action script, and you give a class name. I'm going to use this class name to bring our sounds. Okay, so I have a sound effect for the typing, for the bubbles popping, when we end the game, when we click a button, and for the BGM. Okay, so here inside of our code again, let's try first initializing our BGM. I'm going to say audio.play. It's going to be a new BGM, and the volume is going to be 0.3 because it's the sound, the music. I don't want this to be too loud. Let's hear. Let's try to raise my volume, right? So it's working. The next opportunity we have to call is sound. Let me see. I think is when we type our name. Okay. So if we go to the change event we have here, we can say we can call the audio.play method again. We can pass a new type SFX, and the volume this time can be 2 because my sound effect here is the volume is not too loud. So every time I try to type, you can see I have this nice effect. Okay. By the way, I grabbed this sound effects from freesound.org. It's an excellent site. I do recommend you to check out. Another sound I need is when I click the start button. Okay. So I can call audio.play new button.sfx. Okay, the volume can be 2 again. Let's save. Let's try again. So when I click, you see I have this nice little sound effect. Okay, now the first page, I think it's done. We can actually move to the game, right? The most obvious sound here is when we hit a bubble. Okay, so you have to put this inside of the if statement, because I only want to play that sound effect when the user actually pops that bubble. Okay, because if you add that sound effect here on the top, for example, even if the player doesn't actually if the player clicks or presses an incorrect sound, the sound is going to be played. Okay, 0.8. Let's try this. Let's type anything, start, and you can see when I click the bubble, it pops. Okay, alright, now I need a sound effect for when the time is up. So it's only a matter of going to the timeout function, and in this timeout function we can say SFX. I don't know, maybe this can be 1. Let's try this. So let's type anything. Let's try to play this again. Where is the 31, 4, 5? Okay, let's wait. Okay. And this is the last sound effect I would like to add. Okay, people, I think we're done. Our game is complete. As I told you, this is a very simple game. Okay. Just to show you the basic mechanics and how you can manage a saving and load system. Okay,